All right, Jabosai, good evening, good evening. Let us begin. So tonight we are on Daf Chaf, Chaf Amud Aleph, 20a, and we left off on Thursday night. We finished Thursday night at Rav Gidl, at the two dots before the Mishnah. So it is, the second two dots. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19 lines up from the bottom. Rav Gidl havaragil the havaka azl v'yasav ashari detvila. So Rav Gidl would go ahead and sit by the mikvah, the women's mikvah, and amar lahu hachi tevilu v'hachi tevilu. And this, if there are any shilas, right, he'd be available for the shilas. He would tova like this. Amar leira abanan lo kamistafi mar miyetzahara. I don't know, that seems to be playing with fire a little bit, to sit by the mikvah, right, where you understand why women are going to the mikvah. So I said to him, aren't you concerned about the Yitzhahara sitting by the mikvah and seeing these women go to the mikvah? Obviously, he's not seeing the women go to the mikvah, but he's seeing the women go into the mikvah, right, go into the structure, come out of the structure. So aren't you nervous about the Yitzhahara? Amarle damyan ba'apai ki kakoi chiyuri. So it's actually beautiful. He says, these women are in my eyes like white geese. So obviously, again, the whiteness, a reference ultimately, again, to purity. And what he was saying was he just didn't have a Yetzirah. That this didn't elicit any type of immoral thoughts inside of him. Incredible. What a level to be on. Rabbi Yochanan So Rabbi Yochanan normally sat by the entranceway of the mikvah. Amar kiselkan benos Yisra va'asyan mitvila mistaklin bi. This is a great story about say. So what happened? So Rabbi Yochanan said, you know what? When the women come out of the mikvah, before they go home, I want them to look at me. Why? V'nehavi lehu zara deshapiri kavasi. Ultimately, again, this way they'll have offspring that are as handsome as me. Apparently, Rabbi Yochanan was very handsome. So if a woman sees, someone who is handsome, that's the kavanah she has, to have handsome offspring, and hopefully it'll have an impact on the offspring. Incredible. So Amrli Rabbanon lo kamistafi mar me'ene bisha. So I said to Rabbi Yochanan, aren't you concerned about ayin hara? After all, again, you're sitting there by the mikvah, right? You're broadcasting that you're so handsome. Aren't you concerned about the Yitzhahara? Amar Lebo says, beautiful. Amar Lu, Ana Mizara di Yosef Ka'asina. No, I'm not worried about Yitzhahara. Why not? I'm a descendant of Yosef. The Lo Shalta Ba Eina Bisha. By Yosef, the Ayin Hara, the evil eye, has no hold over it. I will say, just by the way, just a word about Ayin Hara. So Ayin Hara, what is Ayin Hara, right? So it's not like a heebie-jeebie type of thing. Ayin Hara means like this. When a person has a bracha from a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and they either flaunt that bracha, or they use that bracha in a way which causes pain to other people, so the Ribono Shel Olam says, if you're going to misuse that bracha, then at the end of the day, I'm going to take it back. That's what Ayin Hara means. So says Rabbi Yochanan, you're sitting by the mikvah, because again, kind of broadcasting your physical beauty, your handsomeness. So aren't you concerned about Ayin Hara? So he said, I'm from Yosef, and the descendants of Yosef, Ayin Hara has no sway, has no hold over them. So the Gemara says, Dichsiv, because the pasuk says, Ben Poras Yosef, Ben Poras Ale Ayin. Literally, again, a charming son is Yosef. Say Ben Poras Ale Ayin. Va'am Rabbi Yavo al tikri Ale Ayin Ella Ole Ayin. That the offspring of Yosef ultimately, again, Ole Ayin, are above the eye, above the evil eye. That's right, no Ayin Hara could have any type of impact on them. Now we'll see why that is in just a moment. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Yochanan says from here, the Yid Gularov Bekaraf Haaretz. Ultimately, both remember again, this is the bracha that Yaakov Avinu gives to Menashe and Ephraim. And he tells Menashe and Ephraim, the Yid Gularov Bekaraf Haaretz. That literally, again, they will multiply like fish in the midst of the land. Why fish? Just like the fish of the sea, ultimately, again, they're covered by the water, and because they're covered by the water, therefore the Ayin Hara has no control over them. Right? Again, I will say a very important use. So because they're covered by the water, therefore they can't be seen, therefore no Ayin Hara. Af zaro shel Yosef ein Ayin Hara sholetes bam. So to the offspring of Yosef, Ayin Hara, the evil eye, has no control over it. Now we'll say, now why is that? V'baisema, ayin shelo ratzasa lazun mima she'eno shelo, ein ayin hara shelo tisbal. So we'll say, so the Gemara gives a number of different derivations for the concept, ultimately, again, that ayin hara has no control over the descendants of Yosef. So why is that? And this is actually quite beautiful. Why is that? Because in this last answer really gives it. Yosef made a conscious decision to not allow his eyes to benefit from something that was not his. This, of course, is a reference to the entire episode with Potiphar's wife. Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, but Yosef resisted. Literally, again, he would not allow himself to enjoy, to have something that was not his. He wouldn't look at her, and he wouldn't do anything more with her. So I'll say it's incredible. So because of that, because Yosef was careful with his eyes and would not look at something that was not his, therefore the ayin hara, the evil eye, so to speak, has no control over Yosef, which I will say is such an overwhelming idea, right? We all know about the concept of shmiras ha'inayim, of being careful what we look at and being careful what we see. So often we kind of just look at that concept as, okay, it makes sense, and I'm not supposed to look at inappropriate things, because looking at inappropriate things could ultimately lead one, over time, to inappropriate action. But you begin to see from the Gemara something even more profound, that when a person is careful with shmiras ha'inayim, when I am careful with what I look at, then at the end of the day, the ayin hara doesn't have control over me. If I'm careful with my eyes, then the evil eye, ultimately, again, the ayin hara can't have a negative impact on me. A really, really incredible concept. Good. I will say, let's begin our next Mishnah. A really interesting sugya here. Noshim. Yes. No, the Maharsha brings down that it was more like when a woman comes out of the mikvah, that if the first thing she sees is an item of beauty, it has a positive impact. Not that she'd be thinking about Rabbi Yochanan when she was with her husband, right? That would be inappropriate. But it was more like, come out of the mikvah, and now in that state of tara, the first thing that she gazes upon is something beautiful and holy. It sets a different tone for then her intimate relationship with her husband. Says the Mishnah. Noshim va'avadim u'ketanim p'tur miKriyat Shema. So now let's get back to a little bit some of the halachos of Kriyat Shema. Interesting halacha over here. Women, servants, and children are all patur from Shema. Now, I will say we've seen this already before. Why are all of these people patur from Shema? Because remember again, Shema is a mitzvahs aseh shazman grama. It's a time-bound commandment. So remember again, and all of these individuals are exempt from any time-bound commandments. Okay? Kriyat Shema, Amud Beis 20b, Uminat Tefillin. They're also patur from Tefillin. Now, interestingly enough, Tefillin is also time-bound. So with Pashtus, they're also patur from Tefillin because it's time-bound. Now, it's interesting. Rashi brings down something fascinating. Rashi says, while time-bound is a reason to exempt women and servants from tefillin, what about children? What about ketanin? So it's interesting. Rashi says the reason why children are patur from tefillin is because tefillin requires a clean body, and often children aren't necessarily careful enough or meticulous enough to maintain the proper level of physical preparedness, and therefore they don't put on tefillin. Which will say something interesting. I just want to point out something fascinating. The halacha is, Shalom actually paskins, that as soon katan hayodea lishmar es gufo, once a child knows how to keep his body clean, he's obligated to put on tefillin. Which is actually interesting. So, we always associate tefillin with bar mitzvah, but technically speaking, if you have a 10-year-old boy who is cognizant, who is responsible, just in a limited fashion. I don't mean like responsible, like life-wise, but responsible enough to keep his body clean. Technically speaking, he'll put on tefillin. So just an interesting idea. Okay, that's tefillin. V'chayavin b'tfila or b'mezuzah berachos hamazon. But yet, all of these people, right? All these people are chayiv in tefillah. So remember again, tefillah means shmona esrei. So remember again, shmona. Now, why would they be chayiv? Why would these people be chayiv in shmona? So look at Rashi. Rashi is chayiv in tefillah. The tefillah rachamihi. Tefillah, remember again, is a supplication. Umidrabanan hi v'tiknua af l'nashim ulechinuch kitanim. So Rabbi says, so ultimately, again, Shmona Esrei is one of those things where, is it time-bound? Technically it's time-bound, but since it's supplicatory in nature, it makes sense that everybody would want to participate in it. Okay? And benching. So Shmona Esrei, everybody's obligated in. Mezuzah, everybody's obligated in. And ultimately, again, benching, everyone is obligated in as well. Okay? So we'll see all of this. We'll see all of this thing. So let's begin to analyze. Gemara. So Kriya Shema. So remember again, the first statement in the Mishnah was women, nashim, avadim, servants. And again, when we speak about servants, remember again, who are we talking about? That's an Eved Kenani, right? An Eved Kenani, a non-Jewish servant. Because remember again, an Eved Ivri, a Jewish servant is a Jew. So a Jew is chayiv and nitzos. Like there's no Torah. We're talking about an Eved Kenani over here. So women, avodim, kitanim, pata from Shema. The Gemara says, Kriya Shema, pshita. It's obvious. Mitzvahs aseh shazman gramahu. It's a time-bound mitzvah. V'chol mitzvahs aseh shazman grama nashim peturos. And we know the halacha. Every time-bound mitzvah, women are exempt. Women are exempt. So what's the novelty in this statement? So the Gemara says, Ma'otem, what would you have thought? Hoil v'isei malchus shamayim. But I would have thought like this. What is Kriya Shema? Kriya Shema is the acceptance of the yoke of heaven. So because it's such a dramatic thing, I might have thought that everybody is chayiv in Shema. Even women. It's time-bound. I got it. I understand it's time-bound. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it is the acceptance of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and everybody should really be chayiv in that. Uminat tefillin. They're also exempt from tefillin. So pshita, that's also obvious. So ma'od detema, hoil v'iskish lemezuzah. We'll say, I would have thought like this. In Shema, the mitzvah of tefillin and the mitzvah of mezuzah are juxtaposed to each other. So I would have thought that just like everyone is chayiv in mezuzah, so to what? Everyone is chayiv in tefillin. Kamash malon, that even though there is a juxtaposition, tefillin is a mitzvahs aseh shazman grama time-bound mitzvah, and therefore women will be exempt. V'chayavin b'tefillah, but yet women, avadim, kitanim are going to be chayiv in tefillah. Why? Derachaminin, ultimately, because tefillah is a supplication. And it was everybody needs to supplicate. Everybody has needs from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as such, halacha l'maisa, everybody's obligated in tefillah. So the Gemara says, Ma'odetema, what would you have thought? Hoil uksiv bei. Now listen to this. Hoil uksiv ba, erev vavoker v'tzaharayim, ki mitzvahs aseh shazman gramadami. So this is very interesting. Since the pasuk, now the Gemara is recording the pasuk from Tehillim. The pasuk reads like this: Erev in the evening, Boker in the morning, Tzarayim in the afternoon, Asicha ve'ema vayishma koli. I converse with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So David HaMelech, when he talks about tefillah, right, he discusses it as being at different intervals of the day, right? In the morning, in the evening, in the morning, in the afternoon. So you might have thought, therefore, tefillah is also a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. It's also a time-bound commandment, and therefore you should be pater. Kamash malna. Rabbi said, I just want to point out something interesting over here. Tefillah is time-bound. Tefillah is time-bound. But even though tefillah is time-bound, the Gemara says, since it's rachami, it's a request for divine compassion, it's supplication, I'm asking my needs, everyone needs to be involved in that. So because that, even though there is a time element, halacha l'maisa, women are still going to be obligated. Beautiful. Okay, let's go back to mezuzah. But yeah, to both say again, everybody's obligated in mezuzah. So the Gemara says pshita. So that's obvious. So now to both say, obviously, chayv mezuzah, right? After all, again, mezuzah is not time bound. Right? There's no time element. So remember again, at most, women are exempt from mitzvahs that have a time element. But if there's no time element, of course they're going to be chayiv. So the Gemara says, what would you have thought? Ma'od hoil v'iskish l'talmud Torah. So I would have thought like this. Since mezuzah is compared to Torah. Now both say, now where is that? Look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, nakish mezuzah l'talmud Torah, dichsiv v'limaratem osam, so most remember again, in Kriya Shema, there's a juxtaposition to the mitzvah of Torah, of Talmud Torah, to the mitzvah of mezuzah. So I would have thought like this. Now get ready for this. We're going to see this a little later on. When it comes to Talmud Torah, the Torah says, the obligation to teach Torah is dafka, the obligation that a person has towards his sons. there is not an obligation to teach a daughter Torah. We'll talk about that in greater depth. So I would have thought like this. Since ultimately, again, the mitzvah of mezuzah is juxtaposed to Torah, and Torah, there's only an obligation to teach your sons and not to teach your daughters. Therefore, halacha l'maaseh masi mezuzah only applies to men and not to women as well. Kamash mala, no. Kamash mala, even though there is a juxtaposition, halacha l'maaseh mitzvah tefillin applies to everyone. Okay, birkas hamazon and benching. So women are obligated in benching. So pshita, and I both say it's kind of obvious. Why wouldn't women be obligated in benching? So ma'adatem, what would you have thought? Hoil uksiv b'seis Hashem lachem be'erev basar lechol v'lechem baboker lisboa ki mitzvahs aseh shazman gramadami. So I both say this is very interesting. So the pasuk in Shmos talks about the man, right, or about sustaining Klal Yisrael on the desert, and it says, when Hashem will give you meat in the evening to eat and bread in the morning to satiate yourself. So it links bread ultimately again with a time of day. So you would have thought that maybe benching is considered to be like a mitzvahs aseh shazman grama. Kamash malon, not like that. Kamash malon, that halacha l'maisa, benching is not time bound, and therefore everyone's obligated. Beautiful. Amar Rava Barava, Noshim chayavos bekiddush hayom devar Torah. Shabbos is an interesting case. Women are chayos. Now we're switching out a little bit away from the Mishnah. So we'll say what the Mishnah essentially has told me is that women are going to be exempt from all time-bound mitzvos. And effectively, with one exception, right? The one exception is going to be tefillah. Even though tefillah is time-bound, but because it's rachami, it's supplicatory in nature, everyone needs to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shemona Esrei, therefore we're obligated. So now let's go through a few more. Listen to this. Amar Rava bar Abba, Noshim chayavos bekiddush hayom devar Torah. Fascinating. Women are obligated in Kiddush. So this is Kiddush on Shabbos. Right, midaraisa. Amai, but 1 second. Why are women chayiv in Kiddush? After all, mitzvahs aseh shazman gramahu. V'chol mitzvahs aseh shazman grama nashim p'turos. 1 second. Kiddush is a time-bound mitzvah. If Kiddush is a time-bound mitzvah, then why would women be obligated in it? Shabbos said it's actually quite fascinating. Amar Abaye midrabanan. It means they're chayiv midrabanan in Kiddush. Amar Rava, but that's not what it says. V'had devar Torah ka'amar. But that's not true. It's the brayso we just said before, that nashim chayavos bekiddush hayom devar Torah. That women are obligated in Kiddush midoraisa. So what's going on over here? V'od kol mitzvahs aseh nechayvinu midrabanan. Furthermore, again, if you're going to tell me that they're obligated in Kiddush midrabanan, then why not obligate them in all time-bound mitzvos midrabanan? To which Gemara says, you're right. Allah Amar Rabba says, finish up this piece. Allah Amar Rabba, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Zachar v'Shamar. Rabba say, when it comes to Shabbos, we have two distinct parts to Shabbos. There's Zachar and Shamar. So what's there between Zachar and Shamar? These refer to ultimately, again, the positive commandments and the prohibitions associated with Shabbos. So Zachar refers to all the positive commandments, the things I'm obligated to do on Shabbos, Oneg Shabbos, things like that. Shamar ultimately refers to the prohibitions. So there's a linkage between the two, and what does the linkage teach me? The linkage ultimately teaches me, Kol sheyeshno b'shmira, yeshno b'zechira. Whoever is obligated ultimately, again, in the prohibitions of Shabbos, ultimately, again, is obligated in the positive commandments on Shabbos. V'hani nashi hol visnu b'shmira. I will say, since women are obligated ultimately, again, in the prohibitions of Shabbos, i.e. the lamates malachas, they're also obligated in halacha l'maisa, in the positive commandments of Shabbos as well, like Yiddish. I will say, we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up with that last piece, and we're going to see, by the way, this serves as a model that essentially whenever you have a body of halacha that has both prohibitions and positive obligations, even if the positive obligations are time-bound, if you're obligated in the prohibitions, by definition, you're obligated in the positive aspects. So I'll say, shkoyach.